September 2025, the United States Navy surged into the Caribbean with overwhelming force. 8 warships in a nuclear-powered submarine, the largest show of power in the region in decades. Their mission, Washington said, was to fight drug cartels. But everyone knew the target was Nicolas Maduro. Then came the shock. Venezuela struck first. C-802A anti-ship missiles roared off coastal launchers. Chinese-built J-10C fighters scrambled into the sky, and swarms of drones pushed toward America's fleet. For the first time, U.S. sailors faced a direct challenge from a Latin American nation armed with foreign weapons. But here's the question. Against the world's most advanced radar shields, Tomahawk missiles, and carrier-based air power, what price will Venezuela pay? And will this clash remain a skirmish, or spiral into a war that redraws the map of the Caribbean? September 25. Washington and Caracas stand on the edge of a storm. For Donald Trump, Nicolas Maduro is not a president, but a usurper. For Maduro, the United States is not a neighbor, but an empire plotting to strangle his nation. The clash is not new. After Hugo Chavez died in 2013, Maduro inherited power and tightened his grip. Washington struck back with sanctions, oil embargoes, and even recognition of opposition leader Juan Guaido. None of it worked. Maduro survived. But survival came at a price. Venezuela, once among the richest nations in Latin America, collapsed into hyperinflation. Prices soared over 1,000,000% in 2018. More than 7 million people fled abroad, creating one of the world's largest refugee crises. The United States points to sham elections and over 150 political prisoners as evidence of dictatorship. Yet Maduro speaks of sovereignty and resistance. He commands a nation sitting on the largest proven oil reserves in the world, over 300 billion barrels, a prize that, he insists, America wants to steal. He rallies civilians into militias. Reports claim up to 4 million Venezuelans have signed up, training with old Kalashnikovs in schoolyards and stadiums. To bolster his arsenal, Maduro turns east. Chinese-supplied C-802A anti-ship missiles, with ranges exceeding 75 miles, are paraded on Venezuelan television. Radar systems like the JYL-1 sweep the Caribbean skies. Officials boast that even if the U.S. Navy comes, Venezuelan forces will make the waters burn. But Washington is unmoved. Trump declares Maduro's regime illegitimate and a threat to Americans everywhere. He insists that all options remain on the table. Two narratives collide, one of defiance, born of oil wealth and foreign backers, the other of condemnation fueled by accusations of tyranny and the collapse of a nation. The Caribbean grows tense, waiting, and as warships begin to stir, one question remains. Will this battle stay political, or will it ignite into fire on the open sea? By mid-September, the Caribbean was no longer calm. Donald Trump gave the order. A powerful armada was on the move. The United States deployed 8 warships into Venezuelan waters, its largest show of force in Latin America in over 30 years. 2 Ticonderoga-class cruisers, each bristling with more than 120 missile launch cells, 4 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, armed with Aegis radars and SM-2 and SM-6 interceptors designed to swat enemy aircraft and missiles out of the sky, 2 amphibious assault ships carrying hundreds of Marines, helicopters, and landing craft. And lurking beneath the waves, a Virginia-class nuclear-powered submarine, silent, invisible, and terrifying, it could unleash up to 154 Tomahawk cruise missiles, each flying 1,600 kilometers with pinpoint accuracy. In raw numbers, this single strike group could deliver over 500 precision missiles in a day, a level of firepower the Venezuelan Air Force could not match in an entire year. Washington claimed the mission was about drugs. They spoke of cocaine routes, of traffickers moving tons of narcotics into North America. But everyone knew this was about more: intimidation, regime change. A message to Nicolas Maduro that the U.S. Navy could strike him at will. The timeline was brutal. Early September, ships departed Mayport, Norfolk, and Guantanamo. Days later, the fleet fanned out across the southern Caribbean, patrolling near Aruba, Curacao, and Puerto Rico. Within weeks, 3 Venezuelan patrol boats were sunk, 12 sailors killed. The United States said they carried drugs. Caracas called it murder. On Venezuela's coast, sirens blared. Militias drilled with rusting rifles. Families watched American destroyers on the horizon like steel giants in their backyard. To them, this wasn't a counter-narcotics mission. This was the shadow of an invasion. The balance of power was crushing. Venezuela's aging frigates and Chinese-made patrol boats looked like toys against America's billion-dollar arsenal. But Caracas was not ready to bow, because the next move would be theirs. Caracas was done waiting. Nicolas Maduro stepped onto national television and declared, "Venezuela will never kneel." Hours later, the proof came in fire and smoke from launchers hidden along the northern coast. The first wave of C-802A anti-ship missiles roared into the sky. Each carried a 360-pound warhead, flying low over the Caribbean at nearly Mach 0.9. Their reach, up to 112 miles. Their price tag, barely a fraction of an American warship. But a single hit could cripple a destroyer worth $2 billion. And the missiles were not alone. Overhead, sleek silhouettes tore across the clouds. J-10C fighters, the pride of Chinese aviation, with advanced AESA radars and L-15 missiles able to strike from 124 miles. These jets marked a first. Chinese-built fighters operating in America's own hemisphere. To Washington, it was more than defiance, it was provocation. Then came the drones. Dozens of small UAVs, some homemade, others imported with foreign help, lifted off from fields and runways. Each carried 40 to 110 pounds of explosives, flying barely above the waves, too small and too many for radar to track easily. They swarmed toward the American fleet like a cloud of angry wasps. On Venezuelan television, the images played again and again, missiles leaping from launchers, drones buzzing into the sky, fighter jets streaking toward the horizon. Commentators spoke of a nation defending its honor, of a people standing against the world's most powerful navy. In reality, the numbers told another story. Venezuela's Air Force had fewer than 20 combat-ready fighters. Its navy, aging frigates and patrol boats. But with Chinese missiles on the shore and swarms of drones overhead, Maduro's generals believed they had found a way to level the field, at least long enough to make America hesitate. For the first time, U.S. warships in the Caribbean faced a real threat. And as radar screens lit up with approaching targets, commanders had to make a choice: defend or strike back. Radar screens suddenly lit up across the American fleet. Calm waters turned into chaos in seconds. More than a dozen C-802A anti-ship missiles had appeared on the displays, flying just 49 feet above the surface to avoid detection. Behind them came swarms of drones, over 40 small UAVs, each carrying 40 to 110 pounds of explosives. They were approaching from multiple directions, designed to overwhelm even the most advanced defenses. Alarms blared. Crews rushed to battle stations. Within seconds, the U.S. Navy's defensive network went into action. From vertical launch systems, SM-2 and ESSM interceptors fired upward. These missiles traveled at Mach 3.5, fast enough to cross 93 miles in under a minute. Their job, intercept incoming C-802AS before they reached striking distance. Close in, the defenses grew tighter. Failing CYWS cannons, the Navy's last line of protection, spun up to full speed. Their 6-barrel Gatling guns spat out 4,500 rounds per minute, forming a wall of tungsten projectiles. Overhead, electronic warfare systems jammed drone guidance links, cutting their signals and sending many crashing into the sea. The screen cleared, but not completely. One missile swept in through. It slammed into the side of an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, detonating with a 360-pound warhead. The explosion ripped open compartments, ignited a fire, and left dozens of sailors injured. Damage control contained the blaze, but the message was unmistakable. Venezuela could hit back. The U.S. response was immediate and overwhelming. From beyond the horizon, FA-18EF Super Hornets launched, each armed with AIM-1. 120 AMRA AMS and JDAM precision bombs. Within minutes, they engaged Venezuelan J-10C fighters. Two were destroyed in aerial combat, shot down before they could close the distance. In the skies above, MQ-9 Reaper drones hunted Venezuelan UAVs, using Hellfire missiles to destroy dozens in rapid succession. At the same time, 8 Poseidon patrol aircraft dropped sonobuoys across the water, triangulating the locations of Venezuelan coastal launch sites. Then came the decisive blow. From beneath the waves, a Virginia-class nuclear submarine launched a salvo of Tomahawk cruise missiles. Each missile had a range of 1,600 kilometers and could strike with an accuracy of less than 16 feet. Minutes later, Venezuelan shores erupted in fire. Missile batteries were destroyed, radar sites annihilated, and command bunkers turned to rubble. The powerful JYL-1 radar, Venezuela's critical early warning system, went offline permanently. The scale of destruction was staggering. In less than 48 hours, Venezuela had lost multiple missile sites, several radar installations, and at least 200 to 300 troops. Two of its most advanced J-10C fighters were gone. Its drone fleet was devastated. By contrast, U.S. losses were minimal. One destroyer damaged, several dozen sailors injured, but no major ships lost. In raw numbers, the firepower gap was undeniable. A single American submarine, with its 154 Tomahawk missiles, carried more precision strike capacity than the entire Venezuelan Air Force combined. The battle proved a brutal truth. Technology, precision, and training turned the U.S. Navy into a force that could dismantle an adversary's defenses in hours. Venezuela had drawn blood, but America answered with overwhelming force. And as smoke rose over the Caribbean, the world watched, stunned, knowing this clash was only the beginning of a much larger crisis. The guns fell silent, but the Caribbean was still burning. On shore, smoke rose from destroyed missile sites. Offshore, U.S. destroyers regrouped around their damaged sister ship. The battle was over in less than 48 hours, but its political aftershocks began immediately. In Caracas, Nicolas Maduro appeared on national television, his voice defiant but his face tense. He claimed Venezuela had repelled the empire and promised that the sacrifice of the fallen would not be in vain. Yet behind the words, his military was shattered. At least 200 to 300 troops were confirmed dead, 2 J-10C fighters destroyed, and the nation's radar network reduced to rubble. Venezuelans mourned their losses, but many also questioned whether provoking the United States had been worth the cost. In Washington, Donald Trump wasted no time. At a White House press briefing, he declared victory. He described Maduro as a dictator who had been taught a lesson and warned that America would not tolerate threats in the Western Hemisphere. Trump highlighted the scale of U.S. power: 8 warships, 1 nuclear submarine, and over 500 precision missiles ready to fire at a moment's notice. His message was aimed not only at Venezuela, but also at Beijing and Moscow. The international community reacted with alarm. At the United Nations, emergency meetings stretched late into the night. Russia accused the United States of naked aggression. China, whose missiles and fighters had just failed on the battlefield, condemned Washington but chose its words carefully. Beijing insisted its cooperation with Caracas was defensive in nature, while quietly studying how U.S. systems had dismantled Chinese-built weapons. The European Union called for restraint. France and Germany warned that the clash risked turning the Caribbean into a permanent flashpoint, destabilizing the entire region. Human rights groups demanded answers about civilian casualties. Reports suggested that at least dozens of Venezuelan civilians living near the destroyed missile sites had been injured or displaced. Latin America was deeply divided. Colombia and Brazil, traditional U.S. partners, welcomed the show of American strength, seeing Maduro as a destabilizing force. But others, Mexico, Argentina, and several Caribbean states, worried that U.S. intervention revived the darkest chapters of Latin American history, when Washington overthrew governments and installed regimes friendly to its interests. Global media amplified the chaos. Headlines in New York and London spoke of America's Caribbean War. In Beijing and Moscow, Newspapers framed the battle as proof that Washington would never allow challengers in its backyard. Social media erupted with images. Tomahawk missiles streaking across the night sky. A burning U.S. destroyer. Maduro surrounded by generals in front of Venezuelan flags. The economic fallout was immediate. Oil markets spiked overnight, with Brent crude jumping 12% in a single day, as traders feared prolonged instability in one of the world's largest petroleum regions. Venezuela's battered economy sank further, with its remaining oil exports now under even tighter scrutiny. And so the question lingered. Was this the end, or only the beginning? America had won the battle. Venezuela had been bloodied. But the larger conflict, over oil, sovereignty, and great power rivalry, was far from settled. The Caribbean, once a crossroads of trade and calm waters, now stood as the world's newest front line. The battle in the Caribbean ended quickly, but its shadow stretched across the globe. For Washington, it was a demonstration of raw power, a reminder that the U.S. Navy remains unmatched, able to neutralize an adversary with speed and precision. For Caracas, it was a national tragedy. Hundreds of soldiers lost, vital defenses erased, and the illusion of deterrence shattered in less than 2 days. Yet the true impact was not measured in missiles fired or ships damaged. It was measured in perception. On American screens, the story was one of strength, a president defending national security, destroying drug networks, and proving U.S. dominance in its own hemisphere. On Venezuelan screens, the same story was twisted into resistance, a small nation defying an empire, paying in blood but refusing to bow. For Beijing and Moscow, the lesson was sobering. Chinese-built J-10C fighters and C-802A missiles had faced U.S. technology and lost. The world watched closely, asking whether China could match America in a real war, or whether its influence would remain limited to proxy states. Oil markets soared, regional governments debated, and analysts spoke of a new chapter in U.S.-Latin America relations. Was this truly a counter-narcotics operation, or the opening act of regime change? The line between law enforcement and war blurred in the Caribbean smoke. And that is where history often hides. Not in the clash itself, but in what follows. Will Venezuela collapse under pressure, or emerge more defiant? Will the United States stop with a warning, or press until Maduro falls? And how far will China and Russia go to defend their partner on America's doorstep? One thing is certain, the Caribbean will not return to calm seas anytime soon. The world has seen the fire, now it waits for the storm.